That's for real. Hey, oh yo, I don't even know your name, but you know mine.
What's up, little poo-poo head? I'm gonna beat you so bad, you're gonna cry to your mommy.
Fuck you, you commie.
This is a very dangerous person.
A story so bizarre, it's hard to believe it's true.
Him.
Trust you in my home, you rascal, you. I'll be glad when you're dead, you rascal, you.
Start from the beginning? Well, it's just a prototypical fantasy football league, I suppose, just like any other. And we had Brian, Brandon, Neith, Reza, Mike, a couple of random guys, Rolando, obviously, and Steven.
How the league started? Well, it was 2012, and all our friends in Uptown wanted something to do on Sundays besides, I guess, drink bottomless mimosas and blackout at 3 p.m. So we started a fantasy football league.
2012, it was the first season. It was just a bunch of guys, beer, pizza, hanging out together. Just good times. Good times.
The draft? Well, the draft was at Corey's, and it was your typical fantasy football draft. I guess it was my first one.
How would I characterize our friendship? I mean, we were good friends. We used to hang out all the time. We'd do pub crawls together, and we even doubled up on his girlfriend a few times with the devil's threesome. I mean, he shared everything with us at that point in time. He's a great kid.
Rolando Long. I almost thought his last name was actually Lake Show for the longest time. I knew him like 2 or 3 months before I even realized that wasn't his last name, because that was like on his Facebook page. It was in my phone that way. So, yeah. I didn't really know where he was from. First, I thought he was from Los Angeles because of the Lakers, but he wasn't from Los Angeles. So I assumed he was from Baltimore because he was a Ravens fan, but come to find out, he wasn't. So eventually I realized he was from Kansas. He had went to Kansas, but then I actually found out that he did not. I don't know why he's fans of those teams, but come to find out, he was from Waco, and nice guy. But have you ever been to Waco, Texas? It's the armpit of Texas. You're not missing much. You know who has been to Waco, Texas? David Koresh.
Rolando started off pretty strong in the first 3 rounds. I mean, it was pretty decent for him. He had Calvin Johnson as his first pick, Matt Stafford, AJ Green. Again, solid first 3 rounds.
I remember Rolando starting off pretty well, but then he started drafting some really odd guys. He went Michael Turner, not in the league. C.J. Spiller, barely in the league now. Cutler in the 6th, Jay Cutler. A defense in the 7th. He went Martellus Bennett. Kicker in the 9th. Santana Moss, Felix Jones, Cedric Benson, and Josh Cribbs. How many of those guys are still in the league? Maybe 2.
I mean, the kid grew up in Waco. He doesn't know much about football or sports in general, to be honest with you. I mean, he's a subpar human being. He put up subpar draft results. What'd you expect?
Yeah, everyone questioned his picks. Everyone knows. Even a fantasy rookie like myself knows not to take a kicker and a defense before the last 2 rounds. It's just not worth it. And Jay Cutler, smoking Jay Cutler. I know Jenny's from Chicago, but what was he thinking? He has this weird obsession with Jay Cutler. I don't understand it. Overall, he had a okay draft. Nothing to write home about. But what'd you expect? It's Rolando, Mr. Average.
How was my draft that year? I mean, I picked up Ray Rice, Jamal Charles, Doug Martin, the Gronk. I mean, I was fucking unstoppable. God himself was going to have to come down from the heavens if anybody was going to keep me from winning the fucking trophy that year. I mean, I dominated. It was a breeze, really. No competition at all. Just rolled through the entire season, kicked the shit out of them. It's easy. I mean, even now, 3 years later, I've got the record for most wins in a season, longest winning streak, most rushing yards in a season, and the most rushing yards in a single week. I mean, I just killed those kids. It was embarrassing for them, really. Really embarrassing. What are you going to do? Oh, this little thing? Yeah, I still wear it. Oh, you want to see it? Sure. Yeah, you can look at it. How'd I do against Rolando that year? Shit. I think I just about doubled his score, maybe 140 to 70 or so. I mean, I whipped his ass. I was afraid he was going to quit the league. It was that bad. It was that bad.
My team? 2 words. Injury bug. I don't remember a whole lot. I remember I beat Rolando. Who didn't? "2013, I was on my game. Showed up to the draft, had done all my homework. I had done 42 mock drafts before that night. I had hired 2 draft researchers to work beneath me the previous 2 months. I remember I actually paid $500 to have an online hour session with Matthew Berry. That was really helpful. I was just really prepared. I remember going there, not worrying about food or drink or what beer I was going to bring. Everyone else had all these distractions. I had tunnel vision. I was going right for the championship. That's how I got Brandon Marshall in the 3rd, Peyton Manning in the 4th, Antonio Brown in the 7th, a young rookie Eddie Lacy in the 8th. I was hitting on all cylinders that night. I walked away from that draft knowing I had the best team. The only bad thing about that night, I remember there were a bunch of whores just running around everywhere. the good thing is they were distracting the other guys, and especially Neith, who I think ended up dating one.
So in 2013, I was drunk out of my fucking mind. I mean, I was still partying for my championship the previous season, blackout drunk at the fucking draft. I gave my car to some Asian girl that I'd only met like twice. And then I flew out to Los Angeles for the parties. They were still going on. Yeah, you got to keep those hoes happy when you're a champion. But anyway, from the draft, yeah, the only thing that I remember is Jay fucking Cutler.
Jay Cutler. Jay Cutler. Are you serious? Like, seriously? Like, are you giving up? I mean, I understand Alfred Morris with the #1 overall pick, maybe. I mean, maybe. But with your second pick, Jay Cutler? Jay Smoking Cutler? What? I remember what he told me that night. He said, you'll regret not having him on your team. I remember that. Wow.
Jay Cutler.
Yeah, I remember. There was one point in the season when we were all on GroupMe, which is like our chat group on our phones, when Rolando just started getting upset with us. I don't remember what over, but he accuses us of being racist and uses the word intolerant. And he just drops out of the group. I mean, just leaves. And we're like, what? I'm not racist. Seriously? I love black people. I know lots of black people. My whole fantasy football team is black. Except my kicker and my quarterback.
We've got Reza in the league, who's a Sri Lankan Buddhist. We've got Neith, who's half black. Hell, we let in a woman that year. Sticklin, who's gay. Intolerant? What the fuck are you talking about?
But seriously, leaving the group? Giving up on your friends? What, are you 8 years old?
He started going off the deep end. It's weird.
Then things got weird. I mean weird.
You know, Rolando had done this type of thing before where he stomps up and down and cries like a little baby, but, you know, we got used to it. We just didn't think anything of it. But this was really weird. Jenny called us this one day, and she tells us this weird story about how every once in a while he'll go back to Waco and he'll hook up with like this old nasty couple that he has like these nasty freak orgies with or something. I don't know. But anyway, she looks for him down there, and they say that they can't find him either. So everybody's missing him. So Jenny decides to call the FBI and ask for some help.
This is Eyewitness News at 10.
He disappeared without a trace.
The FBI is not taking this case lightly.
I got a phone call. Well, I was astounded. So one of the first things I said to her was, when the FBI and the U.S. State Department assist you, I have to interview him immediately.
So during the course of the interview, the story apparently is that he blacks out in a bar, and then he comes to, and the next thing he knows, he's locked in this room, and he's like a prisoner with like a few other kids. And
we were told he was held by some kind of like a sex slave kind of ring, and that he had escaped from there, and that he was found wandering the streets.
This was a horrendous interview, and when I left, I was shaken by it because it had all the horrific emotional side effects that go with listening to such a story. He appeared to be quite nervous, and he just seemed very uncomfortable this entire time.
They get chloroformed, and they wake up, and they're, you know, in a place they don't know where they're at.
They were subjected by high-ranking military to sexual abuse.
Anal sex. Can you imagine?
And these guys are like raping him and like shoving things up his asshole. Penises sometimes, but sometimes not.
They kept burning him and giving him insects to eat.
Broke his fingers.
And his left foot was broken with a crowbar.
Doing military scare tactics.
They would put needles in his eyes.
Headphones on their head, screaming and yelling different languages.
Spanish kept playing over and over, and a voice kept saying, "You are not you."
If he spoke English, he was beaten.
They sell him for money for sex.
They were always in uniforms.
A solution was put in his eyes.
I remember the report saying that they made him look at disgusting images. I think the quote was that no one should ever endure. I wonder if they made him look at his fantasy football record.
He was tortured. I mean, he had torture written on.
I let them know that I was very sorry about what had happened to them, and that we were going to locate the people who had done this and put an end to the trauma that he'd been through.
So then we got him back.
It was hard, him coming back. He was different.
We had no idea what kind of person we were getting. He was coming back. I wanted to run and grab it only, but he held back. So I walked down and grabbed his hand and hugged him and told him I missed him. He had changed so much. It was like mind-boggling.
He was different. He still sucked at fantasy football, and he still didn't know shit about sports. But he was different. It's hard to put my finger on it.
But then I realized, you tell yourself, well, he's been through all this horrendous stuff, so he's absolutely going to be different.
So I remember touching his nose and telling him, I remember that nose, you kind of look like your Uncle Pat.
Even though we got Rolando back, there was still a fantasy football title to be won. Yeah, on the back of Peyton Manning, I basically crushed the regular season. I don't think it was close. I mean, with the Broncos killing teams, so was I.
So how'd I do in 2013? Shit, I don't even remember. Like I said, I was still drunk partying from the 2012 championship.
6 touchdowns this game, 4 touchdowns that game. I basically jumped on Peyton's back and rode him into the sunset.
Steven had a better year. He did pretty good. I can't remember what place he got, but he did better.
First. I got first.
How did I do against Rolando that year? Shit, I don't know. I was drunk as fuck all year. I think we split games. 1-1? Yeah.
See those diamonds? They're forever.
So 2013 ends. Rolando gets last place, exactly where you expect him to finish, and we start 2014 with our annual draft. And Rolando starts off, and again, he does okay. He gets A.J. Green, Julius Thomas, Jordy Nelson. But then after that, his 4th through last pick are just complete scrubs. And once again, it's just like, it's what you expect from Rolando, but if it was anybody that actually knew anything about sports, you would think that they were just throwing the season from the get-go.
2014, well, it was a little weird. Rolando drafted guys like Colin Kaepernick and Justin Hunter, Terrence Williams, Maurice Jones-Drew, Dennis Pitta. I mean, come on. Those guys are terrible. But throughout the season, he just started making these waiver wire picks that were blowing his team out of the water. They were just like, who are these guys? Where are they coming from? Odell Beckham Jr., Justin Forsett. Players on good teams that were scoring like 20 points a week. Like Garrett Blunt with multiple touchdowns and Lamar Miller on the Dolphins. It was weird.
And we're all extremely shocked, as you would expect.
It was weird. It just didn't make sense. No one just sucks 1 minute and then is good at something.
But somewhere around the November timeline, we start to get really suspicious about what's going on here. And there's the rumor mill just starts flying like crazy within the league to try to figure out what is going on with Rolando and his team. So one theory was that he was fucking the commissioner. And there was some evidence that might make you think that it was happening, but we couldn't prove it for sure.
Yeah, I heard the commissioner story. Seemed plausible. No one could ever prove penetration. There was a lot of chatter, a lot of hearsay. I heard different stories. I don't know which were true, but there were a lot of them.
So the next theory that made its way through the media was that Rolando was doing steroids, but that one was quickly squashed whenever we realized that he's a fat ass. There's no way he was doing steroids. So that one went by the wayside.
No way.
So then we had to come up with another theory. How is Rolando actually doing a decent job at fantasy football? It doesn't make any sense. And I don't remember who brought it up, where the origin of the theory came from, but somebody suggested maybe Rolando wasn't the one who was managing his team. And that sort of caught on. And this snowball effect kept going, and everybody jumped on the bandwagon, and it seemed like the most plausible explanation.
See, Corey told Reza, and Reza told Neith. Neith told me. I called Kovacs. Kovacs told Mike. And so on and so on.
And then something really weird happened.
I remember the call from Jenny.
Jenny calls us up one day, and she says that she's suspicious that the guy who's been coming home isn't really Rolando. Looks like Rolando, but it's not Rolando.
Jenny knew it. She was the first to know.
She noticed that he was actually getting good at fantasy football. He actually knew what he was talking about when he was watching sports. But the real kicker, the thing that tipped her off, was that she finally had an orgasm for the first time since they've ever had sex.
She finally came.
And you gotta remember that this is Rolando, and the only guy that's giving Jenny orgasms at this point is that guy that she used to date from Chicago PD. So this guy that she's still fucking from Chicago PD is giving her orgasms. Definitely not Rolando, but out of the blue, Rolando gives her an orgasm. So now she's got some hard evidence. This is not Rolando.
I remember she called this Rolando, she had a nickname for him, Christopher Columbus, because he finally discovered her G-spot.
So this is crazy news. We just thought that maybe Jenny was managing his team or some other guy, but it turns out Rolando might not be Rolando. So we do what any self-respecting fantasy football league would do. We called a private investigator.
My name is Charlie Parker. I'm a private investigator. Hey, how you doing? Say, I want you to do something for me.
I know dark clouds gonna gather around me. I know my way will be rough
I got a call back in November, and he wanted me to track him down so they could get an interview with him.
So we gave the private investigator all the background information and told him about how Rolando had disappeared. He had had all sorts of anal raping done to him and, you know, that sort of thing. And so he thought it was best if he called the FBI to get them involved again.
This was a case, I mean a real case. This guy was lying about who he said he was. I expected him any day to blow up something at the air base or do something at the Army base.
And my comment to him was, you need to be very careful that you don't intrude on a federal investigation.
Federal investigation? What the hell are we getting into?
So the FBI and the private investigator are working together, and they go out and they find Rolando to interview him. But they ask Rolando questions that they would expect that Rolando would be able to answer. You know, nothing about sports, but questions you would expect him to be able to answer.
What's a German Shepherd's penis taste like? What's the Tuesday special at Pecan Lodge?
And he couldn't answer any of the questions.
All the information he gave us was very, very general. He couldn't give names, he couldn't give places, he couldn't give times, he couldn't give anything.
It was a moment where the hair stood on the back of your neck, and there was just something wrong about it. It made me think there was something going on more than meets the eye. Of course it did.
Something was being hidden, and I didn't know what that was.
So after the interview's over and everybody parts ways, and the private investigator and FBI agent debrief with us, they tell us that they don't buy that this guy was really Rolando. He was able to answer questions about sports. He couldn't answer questions about Rolando's personal life. And so something just didn't quite add up, even though they couldn't prove that it wasn't Rolando.
No one was buying it. It wasn't him. It wasn't.
So on behalf of the entire league, we thank the FBI agent and the private investigator for their efforts, even though we really didn't get any questions answered.
Meanwhile, Rolando is beating every team every week, and not one person can tell us why.
But then something happened. That night, Rolando calls the private investigator and says, "I want to meet you for breakfast tomorrow. I have something to confess."
This was it. Finally, some answers.
We ordered hotcakes, and we started to eat, and he said,
"I'm not Rolando Long."
And I thought, well, I'll be damned. I actually said, well, I'll be damned. You're gonna finally tell me who you are. And my heart was beating fast, just like it is now thinking about it. And I said, who are you? He said, I'm Frederick Bourdin, and I'm wanted by Interpol. And Interpol is kind of the god of the cops. You follow me? That's the highest stuff you can get in copland. And so I thought, Jesus Christ, if he's wanted by Interpol, what has he done? You know, there's no limit to what he's done.
Finally, we're getting somewhere.
I phoned Nancy Fisher. I said, this guy's a fake. It's not him.
What? Everything was snowballing and snowballing and snowballing. And he said, we've just identified him. And I said, you're kidding. He said, what I'm going to do right now is fax to you the records that I have. And so I stood over the fax machine waiting for, of course, them to come in because I was screaming and jumping up and down. I was like doing a dance and everybody was high-fiving, and it was just like, you know, we finally know who this person is. Frederick Bourdin, his delinquent activities and modus operandi. He has traveled throughout Europe, appearing at shelters for minors under different aliases.
Frederick Beard, Spain, 1992.
Benjamin Dianasan, Spain, September 1993. Shelter for
Jimmy
minors.
Peter
He stays for
Manfred,
several
Luxembourg, 1992.
Ernie Wright, Barcelona. He stated that he had run away from his adoptive parents' house.
Thomas Wilson,
He
Brussels,
refused to give his real
95.
name. He was interned in Fernandez, Pyrenees.
Alex Ross, Milan,
Making
1993.
false statements. Benjamin Kent, Glasgow.
I sat there, I could hardly eat. I could hardly swallow my food.
Robin Morans, Arnaud Orians,
Deportation
Shajan
order
Raskovich,
was issued against him.
Mark Sullivan,
He always wore glasses. Giovanni Petrullo. Made his identification.
Michelangelo Martini,
Alex Doe.
Donovan McNeff,
Thomas Wilson.
Peter Sampson,
William Thomas.
Jimmy Sally,
93.
Peter Robbins,
92.
James Markey,
94.
Frederick Cassis,
93.
Jonathan Doran,
Apparently, when he was in the shelter for
Francisco
minors,
Hernandez Fernandez,
5.
Shedgen Gutierrez,
He was assigned when he was in
Spain,
prison. He tried
1997.
self-mutilation. It's possible he may need psychiatric help.
So the guy admits to the private investigator that he isn't really Rolando Long.
His name is Frederick. He's the one that's been managing the team the whole time. So the PI called and said this Frederick is willing to come clean and tell us he's the one that's been running the team the whole time. We didn't get a lot of details from the PI, but we did know that we're gonna finally get the truth from this imposter.
So Stephen and I get on the phone immediately, and we decide that we're going to drive down the next morning to Waco, and we're going to go see this guy. Who is this guy? What's his story? And what's happened to the real Rolando?
So I pick up Corey, and I can't wait to head down there so we can finally find out the truth.
Stephen and I drive down to Waco the next morning. We go straight to this house, and we go knock on the door where this Rolando guy lives so we can get the story. What's going on here? But there's no answer.
No one was there. What the hell? I wanted answers.
So we decided to go have breakfast, and we were gone for a couple hours. We came back, we knocked on the door again, still no answer. That evening, no answer. We get a hotel, we come back the next day, no answer. This goes on for days.
I took 3 days off of work. Fantasy football is that important to me.
We are dying to know what's happened. No answer. Nobody ever showed up to that house. Nobody ever came to get the furniture. Nobody ever came to get the bills. And now there's a guy claiming to be Rolando again. And we think this really is Rolando. Because since then, Rolando has gone on to win the championship in 2014.
He won. That motherfucker won.
And all he can say is, champ this, champ that. He won't shut the fuck up. He's just annoying as we can ever remember him being in 2012 and 2013. So we're confident that we have the real Rolando back. But what happened to this other guy? We've got a private investigator who tells us that this look-alike admitted to being Rolando, but there's no way that we can prove it.
It didn't make sense.
So now we have this private investigator who tells us that we have a verbal confession from an imposter claiming that he was the one who managed the team, Raging Snow Monkeys, all year long. But there's no proof. We can't find the guy. So if you think about it, essentially, Rolando's gotten away with fucking over those nasty orgy sex people that he's fucking all the time. He fooled them. He got away with murder.
He murdered him. I know it.
And even worst of all, he won the league in 2014 by cheating.
I don't know what happened, but it's all a sham.
And he fooled us all.
How could I be so fucking stupid? I mean, seriously.
The only person who won out of all of this was Jenny, because she got an orgasm from somebody other than that guy on Chicago PD.
He was a fantastic actor.
So everybody's got a theory. Mine? I think that in 2013, when he disappeared to go get anal raped, he actually did it on purpose. He wanted anal raping. That's just the kind of guy that he is. And while he's out begging for dick in his ass, he meets a guy who looks just like him, who can actually hold conversations about sports and speak intelligently about it. And he asked this guy to come manage his team for him. And this guy chose to do it. Well, somehow the real Rolando found out that this fake Rolando was going to come clean to Steven and I, and Rolando got to him first. I think he killed him in that house and buried him in the backyard. It's just a theory.
My theory? I think Rolando made that Frederick guy disappear. I don't know how, I don't know where or when, but I know he did it. He's that type of guy. He's ruthless. The ironic thing is a package showed up at that house, and it was addressed to Rolando Long. So I did what any curious person would do. I opened it. Turns out, Rolando Long did get a championship ring. Not my choice of style, but hey, fits him perfectly. His championship, it'll always have an asterisk. It'll always be tarnished. It'll always be tainted. It'll always be impure. It'll always be an asterisk. It makes sense that he would cheat. I mean, his two favorite people in the entire world are a murderer and a rapist. You do the math.
That private investigator, though, I gotta hand it to him. He's still trying to figure out the mystery.
I couldn't let it go. There was no way in the world I could let it go. I started to put two and two together, and I thought something happened inside that house to that boy. This is the street the kid lived on when he went missing. There's the house right there. Daryl, Charlie Parker. How you doing? Oh, it's nice in here. So this is a house, huh?
Yes, sir. When we first got my dog, he was always digging in the back corner over there where the tree is. And one day I was mowing and saw like pieces of like plastic, kind of like a tarp kind of material.
Okay.
Sticking out of the ground. I tried to pull it up to get it out, and it just kept ripping on me. It was stuck on the ground. So I never paid any attention to it, never gave it any thought until last night when we were speaking on the phone.
And the bush has been there a while.
I didn't.
Yeah, it's a good spot. Let's see. Say he dumps him here first. And then, if he looks up. Yeah, this is good.
you crave. I'll be glad when you're dead, you rascal, you. Trust you in my home, you rascal, you. Said I trust you in my home, you rascal, you. You know I trust you in my home. You wouldn't leave my wife alone. I'll be glad when you're dead, you rascal, you. You asked my wife to wash your clothes, you rascal, you. You asked my wife to wash your clothes. It's something else, I suppose. I'll be glad when you're dead, you rascal, you. I'll be oh so glad when you're dead, you rascal, you. I'll be so glad when you're dead, you rascal, you. I'll be standing on a corner full of gin when they bring your dead body in. I'll be glad when you're dead, you rascal, you.
He's a habitual liar, and it blows my mind that anybody could take anything that is said out of his mouth as truth. Fuck him.
Fuck him. Fuck him.